Hello, hello.
Hi there, nice to see you, Gregory.
It's nice to see you too. Welcome everyone who's watching at home on this very special virtual Six Bridges Book Festival panel. I'm here with Steven Rowley and Byron Lane. Steven Rowley is the best-selling author of the 2016 novel Lily and the Octopus, about a struggling writer learning about loss and love through his aging companion Lily, who happens to be a dog. 2019's The Editor, about a writer getting his big break with an autobiographical novel that threatens to unravel his family. 2021's The Gunkle, about a gay uncle who finds himself suddenly taking on the role of primary guardian of a niece and a nephew. And 2023's The Celebrants, a group of friends that meet in college and make a pact to celebrate each other's lives when they need it most. Byron Lane is a two-time regional Emmy Award winner from his time as a TV news journalist. He's an author, a playwright, and a screenwriter. His books include 2020, A Star is Born, about an uptight celebrity assistant struggling to manage his eccentric movie star boss, inspired in part by Lane's time as assistant to actress Carrie Fisher. And 2023's Big Gay Wedding, about a family in small town forever changed by a big gay marriage. Steven Rowley is originally from Portland. Byron Lane is originally from New Orleans. Not only are they both accomplished authors, and they are also married. Hello.
Yay. We're a mess. That's a lot to have to say. Wow, thank you for that nice introduction.
Let's see. So first off, I think it's kind of exceptional that y'all happen to have novels come out on the exact same month and the exact same year. How did you manage to get your different publishers around that concept?
Exact same day. I mean, and I think a lot of people think we planned it that way. And of course, the reality is there's no way we could have. We have different publishers, we have different agents. We wrote the books at slightly different times even. So I think we've managed to make the most of it, but it was a happy accident of that.
And a really beautiful one because my first one, A Star is Born, came out during the pandemic, so I didn't have any book events. And so when it was time, it was kind of nice to pal around with Steven, and he knew all the ropes, and you know, it was really a lovely experience. I think for the book and for me personally, I really enjoyed that.
Oh.
So I've created a few thoughts. Do one of y'all want to go first? Big Gay Wedding, The Celebrants?
Whatever you want, friend, you pick.
Yeah.
I'll go alphabetical. Big Gay Wedding it is.
I knew you were his favorite. Let's tell.
Well, I enjoyed both of the novels, especially Big Gay Wedding. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be from the title. Is there a big gay wedding? Absolutely. Are there hijinks that ensue from that wedding? Absolutely. But there's a lot more to it. I feel like there's this storyline with the mother, Chrissy, who I think helps weave together all of the events throughout the entirety of the novel. And it comes from her very Southern background, where she isn't quite comfortable with the idea of her son being gay. So it's a story of her finding tolerance and finding acceptance. It's an interesting perspective. A lot of people that maybe aren't members of the LGBT community might not realize that sometimes acceptance is not possible. Tolerance might be the best that some people can get, if that. How did you come to that storyline?
Well, I'm from Louisiana, so I grew up there, and so I grew up gay there, not knowing any other gay people. And when I did start to come out, just as you were describing, I ran into this weird fog where people in the South are big-hearted and loving, but then when you creep close to this gay issue, suddenly people's feelings turn a little darker. And so that was always really hard. You know, growing up, I thought the gay thing was the devil inside me, and I was raised Catholic, and I was altar boy of the year a couple times, and I was president of our church youth group, and so I was carrying all these things and noticing people around me who were dancing around the issue, that kind of thing. So for a lady like Chrissy, I thought it would be interesting to have a character who embodied that, reservation, ignorance, someone who had to kind of learn to turn things around, someone who had to learn to accept reality. And so in some ways, Big Gay Wedding is really a coming out story for a mom coming to terms with loving and accepting her gay son.
Yeah, and one thing I thought that was handled especially well is, and I've used this kind of terminology when I've worked with younger individuals while they're coming out, is finding out that your kid is LGBT is sort of letting the dreams that you had for them die. So there's this almost mourning period for some parents that they have whenever that process happens. But I think you just handle it so tactfully and beautifully. And I really appreciated her journey.
Oh, well, thank you. I have this self-help guru that I like. Steve calls her a high-end grifter, but one of the things she talks a lot about is not being at war with reality. And so I tried to bring that to these characters too. Like being gay is a reality in our world, and why are we at war with this very real thing? You know, where's the love?
And there's a lot of joy, though, in the novel as well. I absolutely love Papa, the character, his conspiratorial nature. He knew about the wedding way beforehand and decided he was going to try to help Chrissy understand and accept. And just all of the wackadoo characters from the in-laws and the twin sister, I feel like they bring just a lot of levity into a story that could have otherwise been dragged down with a lot of drama. I feel like it's very well balanced.
Oh, thank you. You know, we have this thing that we talk about when we're going through our projects, and sometimes when we read each other's work. And I think that our instinct is to write humor. Like I think we're comfortable there, and we like to be funny. Steven's very funny. And so we'll talk sometimes about like, oh, be sure to write to the emotion, be sure to write to the drama, and the comedy stuff will sort of follow. And I think that's served us pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too. There's a balance in both of our works, I think, where you know, hopefully it appears very effortless on the page, but you know, sometimes it's a very precision level work. You know, you go one joke too far and it can throw off the balance of a scene and make it maybe seem too silly. And if you go conversely too long without giving the reader the opportunity to take a breath through a laugh, you know, it can color a scene too darkly. And so it really is sort of line by line, you know, surgical editing sometimes.
There's quite a few quotes from a 1912 book about marriage. Is that an actual book that you found, or is this all created for the sake of the novel?
Oh my gosh, Gregory. So my editor had the same question when I finally sent it in, and he was reading it for the first time. He was sending me texts like, what is this book? I did just make that up. And
okay.
it's Lafitte, because at the time I was reading a book about the pirate, Jean Lafitte. And really, I wanted some framing device that would make the book, that would add this other layer to the book. And so each of those little sections kind of teases what's about to come. And I also wanted to kind of show the absurdity of marriage, that it's been an institution.
Wait,
I know. It's an institution that's been around for so long, but it has changed so much, you know. And so here we are in a novel about a gay wedding, and I thought it was fun to look back at what things might have been like in 1912 versus now.
Yeah, I loved Miss Jeannie. Her little witticisms are very, very, very fun. I had a couple of questions from the novel. It starts off with a summer school field trip, and I have never heard of this concept before.
Well, I can't say that I recall in my life exactly going on a summer school field trip, but listen, when it's important to the story, you know, if it can fit in the world, it can fit in the world. And I really did, my experience growing up in Louisiana and with the rural schools there is, you know, there was sometimes a tendency to bend rules or to adjust rules. And it really felt authentic to me that you could have a smallish school in a rural town where teachers were just like, I need a freaking break. Like, get these kids up and let's go. There was a place where I grew up called, oh man, it was like a thing where you could get in your car and feed animals out of a bucket. So that existed, and that was always like a thing that people tried to do.
Whenever I get the question, could something like that actually happen? I always point to the two words on the cover, a novel.
Well, according to Jed Dearbury, he's a teacher, and summer school field trips are a thing.
Yay!
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jed. There's also an alpaca with alopecia. Was that just for the alliteration?
It could have been. I promise you that it's not beneath me to lean into some alliteration. But I did try to do some research. So like very early on when we have a friend who's a bookseller, and she told us the story about how she grew up on a farm and she washed a sheep with woolite. And we were at dinner with her, and the moment she said this, we both looked at each other and were like, I want that.
Those are the biggest fights we get into as two writers living together, is when we go to a dinner party and overhear some great story or nugget, we're like, that's mine, as soon as we get in the car on the way home. So
I had this sheep on my mind, and I did reach out to some like sheep rescue places to try to get some stories, and some people were kind and some people were not responsive. And then I found out there is like a real thing of Louisiana heritage sheep. So these are sheep that can only live in Louisiana because of the breeding process. They are able to not get certain parasites that other sheep would get. And so suddenly this little sheep thing became something that felt important thematically about what happens when we leave our hometown, how do we survive, and then what do we do when we go back? So it was kind of a beautiful sort of coincidence.
I'm just going to sit here and listen. I'm learning so much.
Baby.
One of my questions was, how did you research about the farming? And I actually wrote down parasite resistant sheep because that's probably information I could have gone without knowing the rest of my life. But now that I know that, it's kind of terrifying. You also mentioned in the novel that fireflies are reverse farting.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how that process works scientifically?
Right. I don't know if the scientific journals use the word farting.
Let's go back to Jed. Are you a science teacher?
There is a process that happens though internally with the it is a chemical reaction that's happening inside of them. So the writing of that might have included a liberty in using the word farting, but there is some kind of chemical thing that happens. And also, by the way, I think Linda, the character named Linda, brings that up, and I did think that farting was consistent with her character. So that was a liberty choice, Gregory.
I loved it. It was so much fun. Then, excuse me. There's also quite a few He-Man references. Is that for personal appreciation of He-Man?
Yeah, were you a He-Man guy?
I really wasn't.
It seems like people were either He-Man or G.I. Joe or sports, but He-Man was a huge part of my life, and in fact, like my favorite He-Man characters are in like a giant pickle jar on my nightstand, and so I'm trying to think if the character in A Star Is Born also had He-Man characters floating around, but yeah, they were a big part of my life, and so I wanted to let that be a part of Barnett's childhood too.
And speaking about a big part of your life, for a while you were working with Carrie Fisher. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, 3 years. Well, let's see. It was 2011 to 2014. Yeah, that was a really spectacular experience. What a brilliant woman she was, and generous and fun. And I hear people tell horror stories about having been a celebrity assistant, and every job has its moments, but really she was delightful and so damn funny.
Well, in addition to being a fantastic actress, she was also a hugely successful script doctor. Now, script doctors usually aren't credited on film, so most people may not know that. A script doctor comes in after a script is written for TV or film and just punches us up, throws some jokes, fix plot holes. Was she very influential in your writing process?
Oh yeah, she, her turns of phrase, the way that she would choose to describe some ordinary thing in some way that approached it from a different angle was so brilliant. And she also liked to, her process was interesting too. She liked to read before she would write. And she used to call that filling the coffers.
I love it.
tips and tricks I try to mirror in my own work,
Yeah, but right down to her own writing, her own books, where she wrote very sort of fiction, but autobiographically, taking elements from her own life and creating them into wonderful works of art. And I think that's an inspiration to so many writers.
Steven, I finished The Celebrants second, and I loved it. It was wonderful. Two quotes that sort of jumped out at me as sort of the main themes were, "No two people have ever met," and "Leave nothing unsaid." I feel like those are underlying themes that travel throughout the course of the entire novel. One thing I noticed while reading it is the character's speech and an internal thought is so tight and so individualized. It almost felt like I was reading a play. Did this start out as a novel, or did it come from a different medium?
No, it started as a novel, but you're right. I'm a very dialogue heavy writer. I think I always have been. It may be sort of how I fell in love with stories like this was through watching movies, movies of James L. Brooks, like a movie like Terms of Endearment, for example, very different from the novel, but the movie itself is, these were the sort of stories I fell in love with as a kid. And so I grew up wanting to tell these stories. There's a line from, Steel Magnolias to, Laughter Through Tears is my favorite emotion. And that's, I think that's kind of where I write from a little bit. So no surprise that there's a lot of dialogue in these. It's always intended as a novel.
Well, as a recap for people that may not have read this novel yet, this is a novel about a group of friends who meet in college, and after one of their friends passes away, they decide to give each other funerals while they're still living, so they can tell each other how important they are to each other. So this pact that happens, it was during crises of their lives. Divorce, loss of parents, jail, cancer. How did you settle on those storylines?
Yeah, the storylines came after the idea of the pact. This novel, and in fact, is I think there's going to be a lot of conversations amongst writers, particularly, and artists about how we're going to deal with the past few years that we've been through and what the effects that COVID will have on us. And for me, a pact like this, telling the people in your life how important they are to you while you still can, is very much a reaction, I think, to the last few years that we've been through, because we've all lost something. It may not be a person in our lives, but we've lost time and some ability to be together over the past few years. And so, this novel, I think, is very much a reaction to that, even though I skipped the years 2019 to 2022 in the novel. I wasn't ready to quite go back there. Exactly. I don't know if readers are either. But then the circumstances under which they would reunite, once I had the concept of the pact, that was, just to make each section of the book as individual as the friend that it focuses on. That was a lot of fun. That's where, the pact is a very serious one, but throughout the book, it spins out of control a little bit over the years. Someone wants a destination funeral, someone gets a surprise funeral. And so finding reasons or things that might be going on in their lives that would facilitate some of the fun that's in the book as well was one of the great joys of writing it.
Oh, wonderful. And the story is told non-linearly. How did you come about coming to the decision that it shouldn't be told from beginning to end, that it should jump around?
Yeah, I think, understanding, and first of all, in writing a book about friendships like that, you want to see these sort of long-term friendships. They need to feel lived in. They need to feel time-worn. We need to sort of understand the beginning of some of these inside jokes they have in a way that doesn't exclude the reader. I very much wanted the reader to feel, like the silent sixth or say seventh member of this group of friends. And to do that, I needed to let you in on their history, so you felt just as connected to them as they felt to each other. So that meant moving backwards in time a little bit, and then also forward in time a little bit as we follow these characters from their time in college until through their early 50s. It was also loosely inspired by early in the pandemic rewatching the movie The Big Chill. That's a 1980s film about a group of college friends who reunite after the death of one of their own. And in watching that film, which was one I remembered fondly, I was struck by how all the characters were 35. This was supposed to be a movie about middle age and about, the loss of youth and what the back half of our lives were going to look like. And everyone was 35. And as someone who was facing their 50th birthday, that was like, all right, everybody calm down. I sort of wanted to age those characters up, which also meant expanding the timeline a little bit, and so that we could follow them into what we think of middle age as more today.
It was very impactful. I will fully admit that I ugly cried at the end.
Well, hopefully you ugly laughed a few times.
I did. What pacts have you made in your life?
Oh my goodness. I don't know, like pact, it's like such a strong word. It's such a formal one. I think we make a lot of promises to ourselves. They're sort of little ones every day. I try to write 1,000 words a day. That's part of my process. It's like a pact I have with myself. Although I don't, that's probably stretching the definition of the word a little bit. We have, I suppose marriage is a pact in a way.
Marriage is a pact.
Suicide pact.
And Steven's also very close still with his college friends, with his siblings. So you kind of got a lot of pacts going on.
I'm gonna have to organize them all.
Two of the quotes, I guess, that stuck out to me were that grief can be a prison, and at some point in the future, I want him to look back on this day and remember that he has the strength to break free. That was the crying moment that I was talking about. And then you only live once. That was the truth of it. But if you do it right, and he felt that he had, once is more than enough.
You're gonna cry again.
I am.
I write a lot about grief, and people often ask me why. And I do think, that this is a country that doesn't. We're not good on the topic of grief and grieving. It's one of the most universal human experiences. If we live, most likely if we love, most likely we're going to lose, and yet we don't talk about it. And it feels very isolating when we're going through it. And the truth of the matter is, so many of us have been through it and understand. And so, I'm kind of on a mission to make grief and grieving something that we talk more openly about, because I think the tendency is to shut down when everyone could benefit from reaching out.
I mean, both of these novels are about taking subjects that would be taboo for the area and talking about them and making them real.
I see a great comment too. Sorry, that we expect grief to happen very quickly, and that it's something that happens immediately. We can process and we can get through and we get over it. And oftentimes, particularly with a significant loss, grief is something that we have to learn to live with, for the rest of our life. And we may be numb to it the first year. It may come later. It may come down the line. And, it's just finding a way to move forward with it as kind of a passenger in our lives instead of letting it take the wheel itself is, I think, the real goal.
Yeah. Thank you, Alicia, for that comment. How did the two of you come to love writing?
Wow. Well,
do we love it? Listen, I'm on deadline right now for something new, so I am like scrambling. These are the moments I'm like, why do we do this?
Listen, we all have our moments. Sometimes it really does feel like a job, but I kind of fell in love early on. I studied journalism in school, and I can remember I took a field trip to a local TV station in Louisiana and met a local.
Was it in the summer?
I don't know. It might have been, actually. It was a Boy Scout. And I fell in love with journalism and storytelling and affecting change in that way. And then I worked as a TV news reporter on air and behind the scenes as a writer for many, many, many years. And so it really is just, for me, telling meaningful stories. And the medium has changed. I've written plays and stuff too, but that's kind of how I got into it. What about you?
Yeah, I think I always used to write. I just told this story. I was at the Bookmarks Book Festival in Winston-Salem this weekend, And I was telling the story about as a kid, writing short stories, and my dad would bring them into his office. He sold the insurance, and he would copy them off on the photocopier and come home with maybe 10 copies of the story for me to give to family and friends. And I just remember this, light bulb, like bing, like there could be more than one copy of something. That's just
beautiful.
A little publishing nightmare was born in that moment. So here I am today. But yeah, I mean, in addition to that, writers are readers, and so for me, the real inspiration was a children's librarian I had as a kid named Mrs. Brado. If there are any librarians tuning in, I love librarians. I'm grateful for what you do. She had a really massive impact on my life just by taking interest in me and cultivating my reading interests and habits.
I love it. I love it. So the two of you are from opposite sides of the U.S. How did you decide to stay in Looney Tunes, California?
Gosh, well, I definitely feel like I fled Louisiana. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I saw the movie Big Business when I was a kid, where Bette Midler and Lily Tomlin are switched at birth, and one of them's a city and country. And
You're the city mouse?
I was the city mouse born in the country who should have been New York. That's how it felt to me growing up, and so I couldn't wait to leave. And New York was too scary, but I made my way to Los Angeles, and then and you did too. And then I feel like in the course of our dating and stuff, we've talked about maybe our paths overlapped at a play or something here and there, but we finally met on OkCupid, and I think we both love California.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think that we've been here as long as we have. Like all the librarians chiming in, I love that so much. But we have a life here. In many ways, I wish the child me could see the life that we have now. A lovely little house and a swimming pool and two enormous dogs who are nipping at our feet right now because it's normally their time for a walk. We're going, I promise. And to be able to both work at home and work on these projects and book to write books and create our own art. I mean, it really truly is a dream come true.
I love it. And I guess we will take a second to shout out Jill, Ginger, Judy, librarians, and Kay.
Yay!
And Nathan. Hello, thank you all.
When I was a kid in rural Louisiana, every day at lunch, I would go to the library and hide with the librarians because I didn't have a real clique. I wasn't.
You make it sound like the librarians were hiding too. You were all crouched behind the checkout. So you were hiding in the library, and the librarians were your refuge.
Yeah. And so the libraries and librarians have a special place in my heart.
Yeah. On this past book tour I did for the Celebrants, I did an event at my hometown library. The children's librarian sadly is long since retired, if she's even still with us. But in the children's room, which was exactly as I remembered it, on the back door of the children's librarian's office, was every writer who has come through has signed the back of the door, and I got to sign the back of the door in the children's library room, where I learned to love reading, and that was a really special.
Love it.
It sounds like
it
sounds like vandalism, and you're making it seem really cute.
Vandalism can be cute. We have a question. What are the names of your dogs, and what type are they?
8.
Did you sign it with a knife?
I signed it when I was a New York Times bestselling author.
Oh, that's a.
That's nice. They could put it on eBay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have the 2 rescue dogs.
Yeah.
What are their names?
Shirley. Raindrop and Shirley. Raindrop because she looks like a rain cloud, but I mean we couldn't name her Cloudy or something like that, but we did land on Raindrop. And then Shirley, there was a Laverne. There was a Laverne, but Laverne got adopted separately. So and then we brought Shirley home and we were like, what do we name you, Shirley? And she seemed so Shirley. We just stuck with it.
Yeah.
So to anyone watching, now is a good time to start submitting questions. If you have any questions for either of our authors, Steven or Byron. I still have a few more that I'm going to work through.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's see, inside of Big Gay Wedding, you said if shoes don't lie. So if shoes don't lie, what type of shoes are you wearing?
Oh my God, I'm barefoot right now. I'm a little trashy. I'm wearing shorts, barefoot.
The thing about Zoom events, you only have to dress from here up. Yeah.
But listen, I'm 45, and so I'm all about comfort these days. I'm obsessed with these
Simmer down.
Allbirds, which are sort of like a sock with sole, and so I kind of just wear those. You wear fancy shoes?
Do I wear? No, I don't. Like I'm wearing, I'm wearing in gym shorts and wingtips right now. No, I'm not wearing fancy shoes.
When you begin writing, do you typically start with characters or story?
Oh, I think it's character for me. I'm not the biggest plot heavy writer. If I were to give myself one criticism, well, listen, writers, we're full of self-criticism, right? I could give myself a lot of criticism, but I'm not the biggest plot heavy writer. I'm much more interested in character, putting people in a room together and seeing what happens. So I think for me, it all starts with character.
God, that was such a good answer. I want that to be my answer too, but I do think I kind of do more plot.
You're much better at plot, in terms of plotter or pantser. I think plotter, pantser. Do you want to pantser? Or fly by the seat of your pants. In fact, I've come into our guest room one day, and there were index cards thumbtacked into the wall all over the guest room, and little arrows and signs. And that's in Byron's like pointing out his next room, and I'm like he's Claire Danes on Homeland off her meds.
I'm working that thing out.
Yeah.
We have a question. How do you write comedy that actually works? Do you have a number one tip for newbies?
Well, I'll field this one, since earlier this year I won the Thurber Prize for American Humor. So I gave myself some self-criticism. I'm going to give myself an accolade there. This
is not the time for modesty.
Yeah, exactly. So, which is a huge honor. David Sedaris and Jon Stewart and The Onion and James McBride won last year. So it really, an incredible honor. It's messed with my head a little bit in terms of this book that I'm currently working on, that I'm on deadline for, because suddenly now I think like, oh my God, people are going to expect me to be really funny. And you can get in the trap of chasing jokes. And I think that's what you do not want to do. I think it's much better that humor sort of comes naturally from your characters and from the situations you put them in, and you can't shoehorn in jokes just because you think that they're funny. Also, I think that's true for writing comedy in a novel format, right? The return on investment is not exactly the same. It's not a Tonight Show monologue. It can't be too current or too topical in the moment, because writing publishing is a long lead industry. It could be 2 years from the time that you write the joke until a reader reads it. And by the way, you're not going to be in the room when it gets a laugh, if it does. So that expectation's there. But also you want your book to have a long shelf life, right? You don't want jokes based on slang or anything too current, because it's going to feel, your book will feel immediately dated. So it's always better to have comedy come from character, knowing your characters so well that you can not only speak as them, but joke as them. I think that's really knowing someone well. And then from the situation, there is a sequence in the middle of the Celebrants that happens when the characters are skydiving that I think is among one of the things I've ever written. But boy, that was great fun. Imagining these people in a high stress situation and something goes comedically wrong, and imagining how they would all react to that slightly differently. It should be fun. The process should be fun. Hopefully you make yourself laugh a little bit as you're doing it.
I love the absolute chaos of the skydiving part of that book.
By the way, if anyone who out there wants to go skydiving, have you been skydiving?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. If anybody wants to go skydiving and hasn't yet, do it now. Then read the Celebrants. I think you'll be in that order and not reversely. Yeah. And Byron also is a very, very funny writer. I mean, we're each other's biggest fans. In fact, when I gave my speech for the award, I said, not only do I have a hard time accepting that I am the funniest writer in the US, I'm not even the funniest writer in my own house.
That's very sweet. He's just trying to make sure he things stayed at peace at home. That was a little I appreciate it.
Happy husband. I have a question here. What are your tips on writing fiction? I'm someone who finds it easier to write nonfiction. I had a professor tell me it could be easier to base some qualities of characters on people you know. What would you suggest?
Well, it's interesting. So Big Gay Wedding is pretty made up. Some of the spirit of people who I knew in my own life, I had a pawpaw. He wasn't like supportive of being gay, but he was a very kind of, he had a quiet wisdom. So I like plucked that, you know, but A Star is Born was much more based on my real life experiences with Carrie Fisher. And then I kind of tried to take some of those nuggets of real life and color them and add imagination. And Carrie used to write that way also. It's something Steve was mentioning earlier. She would take real life and then just add all this color and flavor. And so so I think, yeah, in some way, writing anything is kind of taking from real life. But after I wrote a very early draft of A Star is Born, one of the notes I got back from early readers was that it wasn't dramatic enough in some places, and so making it fiction really helps add that stuff. Whereas if you're trying to stick to the truth, sometimes it's hard to make that dynamic, the kind of dynamite that you need for a novel.
Yeah, I'll say too, you know, I think both of us started with very debut novels that were inspired by events from our own life. So it's that subtle blending of fact and fiction. You know, for me, Lily and the Octopus was a book that I wrote after losing, you know, Lily was actually a dog that I had. And after losing her, you know, and wanting to write about that experience and how that dog had changed my life, I realized what I was really writing about was attachment and how difficult it can be to let go. And so in real life, she had a brain tumor, which she succumbed to. But when writing about it, I changed it to an octopus because there was something about the metaphor of something that was tentacular and can have an actual stranglehold on you. And then I was kind of off to the races. So there's nothing wrong with writing fiction or adding a fictional element to some autobiographical events that might make it easier to tackle fiction for the first time, you know, and might make it easier to write the emotional truth of something if you have also lived it. I think a mistake that a lot of debut writers start, though, is thinking, you know, they're going to go write for memoir. And the thing is, memoirs, you know, just from a business standpoint for a moment, memoirs are a very tricky spot now in publishing. You have to, the ones that break through are truly, you know, almost otherworldly in the lives that some people lead. If it's not celebrity autobiography, which is always going to be its own thing. So I do think sort of, you know, taking some of your autobiographical elements and then having the freedom, as Byron said, to embellish them a little bit, to make them more dramatic, to find you know, a story and a theme to write through it. That kind of blending helps sometimes.
Do you have any advice for aspiring authors that want to date other aspiring authors?
It worked for me.
Yeah, you know, listen, I don't know. It depends on the author. I think it's a lot of fun. I think we've made it fun. I will say our house is quiet, which is good. You know, until the UPS truck goes by or something and the dogs start barking. But you know, and we have a built-in first reader for each other. So I think there's a lot of positives. I think this is stuff to navigate too, professional jealousies. You know, there's no two careers aren't going to be going exactly the same at the exact moment. I think, you know, it was really a once in a lifetime thing that we had books out on the same day this year. So that was a lot of fun. So enjoying it while you can, and making room and having grace for you know, each other when you're not exactly at the same moment in your career too.
And writing was always a big part of us coming together, because when we met on OkCupid, one of my first messages to Steven was, I can tell you're a writer, because his profile was really funny and charming. So it was always kind of, and maybe it's also a little bit of living in LA where everyone has an aspiration everyone in LA sort of has a separate artistic hustle. And so it was nice to kind of find a partner in that journey, because it's a very, it can be a scary space in the unknown out there.
I think, a sign that I think we're a good match is I think that we found, well, I know that we found our greatest artistic successes after we met and got together. And I think there's a reason for that.
I'm amazing.
Yeah.
I'm a lucky charm. No. Really lucky.
How did you propose?
Oh, drama. So the book was, my first book was coming out, A Star is Born, and it was like at the printer. And I was going through chemo at the time. I had a recurrence of testicular cancer. I'm fine now. But that cancer experience really brought us closer together. And we had talked about marriage previously. And I thought, well, you know what? It's not like you have a book coming out every day. I'm going to propose in the acknowledgments of this book. And so I reached out to my editor and I was like, can we add some words to the end of the book? And he's like, what words? It's at the printer. And I was like, I want he'll marry me. And he was like, oh, of course. And so we added that at the end of A Star is Born, will you marry me? And so the UPS truck arrives with the advanced copies, and I'm nervous and sweating, and I bring the box in and open it up, and I say to Steven, hey, will you come over here and look at this? Is this weird,
Well, it's too late for me to look at. You want notes now? It's already book.
So romantic. But then he looked at it and it was very sweet. He said yes.
No, what I said was, is this in all the copies?
That's right. There was some concern about
Did you have one special one printed for me? But no, sure enough, it's in all the copies. So yeah. If anyone's curious, you can read the proposal and the acknowledgments for A Star is Born, and then I publicly answer. I didn't make Byron wait, but I publicly answered the proposal and the acknowledgments for my next book, The Guncle. So now proposal and acceptance are housed together in the Library of Congress.
And adding an even also gross is Lily and the Octopus includes a character named Byron. That was an important part of that story. And A Star is Born includes a character that's based on Steven. So we really did mine lovely elements of our
listen. It's too much. We should have handed out. We should have handed out barf bags with this panel. It's too much.
Oh,
I love it. Do you have any bucket list ideas for future books? Because you're currently working on one.
Does anyone have ideas they want to pitch me? I'm fresh out of ideas now. You.
So just put your ideas on there.
Yeah.
Y'all are the cutest, according to Ginger.
Do you?
I don't, I'm curious. Like I am trying to, leading back to my self-help guru lady, I am trying to be open to the unknown. I'm waiting for reality to show me the way, but I do wonder if the next books will, because both of the previous ones included Louisiana life and bits about that. So I'm curious what the next things will hold.
Yeah, I think and if I wrote down, if I were lucky enough to have a notebook full of ideas right now, I think you grow with each book that you write, and I think that list of ideas would feel outdated by the time I finished the next book and went back to mine them. There is something about a good idea starts, I think, with a question, and you wanted to answer that question, and those questions are change as you grow and age and have a different perspective on the world and whatnot. So I think ideas are always evolving.
And the book you're currently deadlining right now, is that Guncle Abroad?
It is, yeah. Yes, it's a sequel. My first sequel, which I'm really excited about. So
did you do a lot of research by traveling around the world?
I mean, I wish. The sad truth of it is our globetrotting days sort of stopped over COVID, and we haven't restarted them as much as we should. I should open up. I'll call my accountant and see if I can reopen some tax.
Yeah, it's a tax write-off.
Travel.
I got to read an early draft. It's so wonderful, so charming and funny and heartfelt. But I did notice a couple of we traveled to Italy early in our relationship, and I did notice a couple of that sounds like a familiar location.
Well, I mean, listen, if you want to know what it's like to be in a relationship with another writer, I feel for spouses and partners of who are not writers, because we are sponges, right? And so we soak up those little details. So be careful if you're related to the writer, because we're always observing and making note.
And have a couple of fun questions right here near the end. Both of you have experience in script writing, correct?
Yes.
Would you ever consider adapting each other's novels?
What's the fastest way to divorce? Yeah, I don't know. We've adapted our own. I don't know if we should take on each other's, but I think I would trust my work in Byron's hands. I think, one interesting thing is that we write in the same, or I think we write in a very similar genre, I mean, in vein, and we have similar things are important to us, I think.
Yeah, humor, heart, those things, and yeah, I would trust Steven with the beats of either of those books on the screen.
Both of your books feature scenes with magic mushrooms. Was there a lot of research into?
Next. Yeah. There are, yeah. I mean, like, it's funny. You could probably imagine what our lives are like. Like, we both, I think, got to that point. I mean, like, wait, you use this? I was using this.
Well, yeah, and that is becoming like, mushrooms and all that stuff is a part of the conversation in the world right now. And I just got back from Burning Man, so that was a lot of conversation about it.
Just the conversation.
Just the conversation and all. But it did for Big Gay Wedding. I really did need the mom to see the world from a different perspective, and the mushrooms did help with that.
And whenever I was doing research for the two of y'all, I looked at other famous male author couples. One such couple was Allen Ginsberg and Peter Orlovsky. Their love letters were published in a collection. What would the world think of a collection of your love letters, or the more modern love text?
Yeah, we're out of peanut butter. That's what it'd be called.
I mean, the final chapters of the book for sure. That's what. But early on, like, I don't know. We were more romantic early on, and so we actually like printed out some of our early texts and like a little binder. And we're, like I said earlier, we're gross. I can't believe I'm admitting all this, but yeah. So. But for sure, like today was a grocery day, so there were texts about stuff like that.
I love it. I love it. So what color feelings are you two having right now?
Oh goodness.
Oh,
that's from your book.
That's from my book. I would say green all the way. Today's been a really green day. I got a lot of work done. I had a great nap. I can't believe Raindrop and Shirley are being so good during this chat. Can you believe that?
No.
Yeah. So today's a real winning green day.
I did not read his book, so I don't understand the question.
Well, it looks like we're coming up near the end of our time. I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of the Six Bridges Book Festival, this virtual panel. Is there anything you'd like to say to the people at home?
Yeah, I just see one more question that I think is so lovely. If we have 1 second, and it
Absolutely.
is advice you would give to young people, and I just want to say keep at it. There are many paths to getting published. There are many ways to write. There's no correct way or wrong way to do it. And as someone, we each published our first books in our 40s. I tried. Your first book may not be your first published book. I've got several in a drawer that I needed to write in order to teach myself how to write. I don't have an MFA, nor did I study creative writing professionally. That's not the only way to become a published writer. And then honestly, it's attend festivals like this, tune into panels, learn, talk to writers, ask questions. A lot of us are on, well, not so much what used to be Twitter anymore, but Instagram. There are ways to reach out to writers and follow writers that you admire and whose career you might like to model yours after. There's lots of ways to learn and be in touch. And the honest truth is we're here where we are because we didn't give up. It's a business built on people saying no. and rejection. And you have to take that rejection, weather it, learn from it, and keep going.
And Gregory, thank you for chatting with us. It's been so fun to talk to you and get to meet you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, and one last shout out. I just wanted to say how important it is that we tell LGBT stories. I remember I was donating a big box of old LGBT friendly books for my book club to a resource center, and a young woman came up to me with a book clutched to their chest and said that they had never read a book with a person like them in it before. And what you're doing allows people access to that. It allows people to see versions of themselves that they may not be able to see in other media.
Yeah.
So
well,
thank you for all that you do.
Cross spectrum, authentic voices is something that's important for all minorities. And also joy. We write works with queer joy in them now. And, Black joy is a conversation that needs to be, there's so much trauma associated with many minority groups too. And it's good to have works that are also a celebration of those cultures and remind people that there are things to celebrate, bringing it back to the Celebrants.
Always. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, Gregory.